Hello, everybody coming into the webinar. Welcome, welcome. We're going to give everybody a minute to get in and get settled. We have quite a few attending today, so I want to make sure everyone gets in before we start. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Michelle. I'm part of the TribalHub team. Happy to have you here. And I ask every time I do a webinar, where's everyone dialing in from? What state are you in? I'm in Michigan, the most wonderful state. Northern Michigan, actually, I'm calling in from Petoskey. We have an office in Gaylord. Oh, North Dakota. Hi, Herb. Snoqualmie. Oh, beautiful facility up there. We had our regional at your facility there a couple weeks ago. Oh, Kalamazoo, Tribal ISAC team, Tony. Welcome. Alabama. Oh, yeah, Tony's in Alabama. Yes, love seeing everybody. And that's one of the things that is the coolest thing about these webinars is that we really connect with so many tribes from all over the country. I mean, that's what we do usually, but it's cool to see that in like, just through webinar format. So, okay. Oh, Deb. Hello. Oh, I love it. Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started here. Everybody, welcome to our webinar today with the Minburn Technology Group and Telesystems AI. We're going to get started here in just a few minutes. Before we do, just a few reminders. Make sure you use the chat to put in any questions you may have. We will go through those at the end of the session. You can also use the Q&A feature, which is in the three dots and the more thing on the very bottom. Minburn Technology is a TribalHub associate member. They are also a cornerstone supporter, a sponsor of the Tribal ISAC. So we are very appreciative of Alex and team for being such a strong supporter of tribes and technology sharing and really building up those tools to make sure that tribes are doing all that they can to remain secure in this world that we live in, which is constantly changing technology. So I think that was all I wanted to cover in the beginning here. Again, questions, please use the chat. And I think with that, Alex, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce your team and just get things going.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you, Tony Pepper, for letting us be a cornerstone partner with Tribal ISAC. This webinar is part of a series of sessions that we want to conduct, especially on AI as it's ever changing. I'm Alex Nicholas. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer and Chief Advisor for all tribes coming out of Minburn Technology Group. I'm based out of Washington, D.C. I get on the road pretty much every week to every other week to visit all of you and look forward to seeing you soon. This is going to be a webinar between Minburn and one of our partners, Telesystems AI. Ed and Sean, Ed being the CTO and Sean being a SME in the AI space, will lead a large portion of the discussion today. The purpose today is really to go more to mid to high level on what AI is today and really coming to the realization that it's not a product. And really, it's a capability layer that we believe will fit across your entire organization, not as one solution, but as many solutions for you all. Minburn being a small business reseller, primarily selling Microsoft, doing EAs, but we also have a lot of product and partners that we support in the tribal community. And we want to continue doing these webinars. So right off the bat, we do have a Tribal Net speaking session that will be focused on AI acquisition, which will be complementary to what we'll be talking today. So let's go ahead and get started. So let me pose a question real quick. Who has staff right now? Any employees, anybody in your tribe that is using ChatGPT or Claude? We can leave that to get some chat going here. And really what I want to do is basically tell you about my story in AI, starting in probably everyone. Yeah, it sounds like it, across a lot of the organizations. My personal AI adoption started in 23 and 24, where I was using AI every day for my chats, questions that I posed in both Google and in Microsoft, and doing heavy duty searches. And that really was a quick introduction to AI that I think we all experienced. And 25 is really where a lot of my personal work and personal life AI experiences came from. And using a very small device like this, I could record my voice. It automatically transcribes it. Then it does a summary of all the chats and stories that I tell, because I am writing a book on sales in the AI revolution right now. So that's something that I'm working on hardcore to capture. And that little device then puts it into my Scrivener app, which is basically a book writing app. In 2026, it evolved to now it's taking the transcription in my stories and it actually is categorizing them using agents in different sections of the book to where it will become realization of what my story line and stories are going to entail with lessons. And it's becoming almost fully automated how the agents categorize them. And that's really the key message here is the pace is changing in AI dramatically. The first evolution was 2 years. Now it's a year. And I think in the next couple years, it's going to be every 3 to 6 months, you're going to see dramatic AI changes. So looking at the chart on the bottom right there, this is really the hype cycle for AI right now. And I put boxes around where I believe most of us sit, meaning that there's a lot of expectations around AI and there's a lot of concern that is actually bubbling up because of our experiences, the news that we hear, and all that. And I know that we'll talk about a couple scenarios that are happening in real time right now, which is good that we're having this conversation. Going to the next slide here, I really wanted to highlight that, every tribal nation is different, and each of the operating industries and practices and organizations within your nation have different requirements for AI. That's why early in the conversation, I say there's not a product that fits everybody. And you can see here that for a casino and gaming, there's use cases for surveillance, computer vision, player development, where AI can actually support churn prediction, comp optimization, and host outreach prioritization. For your health and clinics, you can think of AI as your partner in drafting visit notes for patients, doing prior authorization automations, scheduling for appointments, that type of thing. AI could fit that. For your tribal governments, AI can support funding discovery, application drafting for any type of compliance reporting. And then for enterprise IT, you can imagine your SOC alerts, triage, any type of responses that you might need to take can be accomplished using agents and AI. So that's a lot. And now what I want to do is hand it over to our partner Telesystems, and they're going to dive into a couple scenarios that we should at least be aware of right now, and then they'll continue with their concepts here. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Ed and Sean.
Yeah, thanks,
Excellent.
Alex. So before we get into the, sort of strategy frameworks and roadmaps, I did want to tell the group today about two things that have happened this month. To me, this really is, making the AI threat a lot more real. These are no longer theoreticals or predictions, and this really isn't meant to be a vendor scare slide or anything. So I just want to kind of present the cases to you. Case number one, you can see OpenAI actually gave a test agent that didn't have proper governance and guardrails around it a task. They thought it was isolated. It broke out of the sandbox, which those of you that have rolled out AI have probably experienced this. It's pretty easy for these things right now to do that. So long story short, agent found a 0 day, escaped from the sandbox, got online, used stolen credentials, and actually broke into a real company's system to look up test answers, which is very amusing for a multitude of reasons. And there was just thousands of autonomous actions that it took there. And not one of them was directed by a human. It was the AI agent going out and using tools to accomplish a task that it was given, right? And even OpenAI responded to this and said this was an unprecedented incident. And I don't think it'll be the last one that we hear about like this, right? Case number two there, the Jade Puffer incident. This is a pretty fascinating one to me too, because I've actually been in security long enough that I've been around when companies have got ransomware and things. And sometimes we were saved by the fact that the code was poorly written and the blast radius was therefore minimal because the ransomware crashed. However, in this case, because it was run by an AI agent, the whole end to end from the reconnaissance, the exploit, the credential theft, all the lateral movement, the encryption that it actually was writing, and the ransom note was all governed by an AI. When it actually caught a failure and debugged its own code and got the ransomware back up and running to continue the exploit. So no longer do you have this sort of speed delay. Things can happen very quickly within seconds now when you lead on AI. And to me, this really shows sort of the offensive skill barrier has dropped significantly. And I'll give you some good news about that later, about how the defense barrier is following the same trend. So it's not all gloom and doom here. But if there's a sentence I really want you to hold on while we talk about this, it's that both of these attacks were agents without governance. And I think that's really the key here. And the defense against this is really not anything magical or intangible. It's really the same discipline that we're going to talk about today and work on building. And it's that authority limits, boundaries, and being able to have a watch that never sleeps. Ed, did you want to add to that?
Oh yeah, just one point. When it comes to things like the OpenAI agent, I just want to make sure that a lot of the agents that we use from OpenAI or Claude as commercial customers, they have safeguards built into them that will stop that kind of behavior from happening. So if you go to Claude today or you go to OpenAI and you say, I want to hack something, it will push back and tell you it's not going to do that. So there are aspects of it that are controlled today. I just want to make sure that you don't get the impression that by putting one of these agents in your environment, that this is the kind of thing that's going to happen to you. There are governance plans and safeguards to prevent that. These are two cases. This is the adversary perspective. Generally, you want to look at it of how powerful they're becoming. And I have 3 or 4 personal friends whose businesses have been legitimately attacked, compromised, and they've lost real money as a part of this whole process. So the threat is becoming more real. Not a scare tactic, but just the reality.
For sure. Thank you. Next. So that's really why we wanted to have this talk with you all and why we called it Securing the Nation in the Age of AI, right? The age is not coming, it's here, and it's arrived on both sides of the firewall. So the contract I want to make with you all is about these 4 takeaways here. And it's exactly what the webinars promise. I want to talk about the role of the AI agents, especially across cybersecurity, building an AI roadmap, and the governance, risk, and policy, as well as resources and next steps. So those are the 4 big takeaways that you all will be leaving with today. And it's not a sales call for us, and nothing's gated or held back. And I'm happy to answer questions and go as deep as you all like. So right now, I do want to illustrate that there's 2 clocks that are running, right? And those case files were obviously kind of the dramatic version, but this is more of the more everyday to day version. And you already have these clocks running, whether you are aware of it or not. You might have experienced or heard about others experience AI attackers using things like clone voices or deep fakes and things like that. That threat's becoming more real every day. The phishing threat, it's no longer as easy as it used to be. The typos are gone, the translation failures are gone. AI can help shape that up, and more or less those don't get flagged by those security guardrails that Ed was talking about. So attackers are able to utilize this stuff pretty heavily. And reconnaissance as a adversary has gotten much faster, right? Because you're able to enumerate over large data sets more quickly. So that's a lot of that outside attackers adopting AI. Inside, and this is the one where Ed and I find a lot of our clients struggling, and what kind of one of the big focuses that we'll have today is the AI that you've brought in or want to bring in is not malicious inherently, right? It's your own people being resourceful. It's them giving data from notes, meeting drafts, or sorry, drafts and meeting notes. It's them asking for translations and so on. But we need to be aware that and really pay attention to the agreements that we have with our providers, because there's sensitive data that's going to get pasted in here. And it might happen in a way that's relatively innocent and whatnot, but we want to make sure that we know where that data is going, how it can be used, and in particular, how the vendors themselves are going to be treating this, right? So I'd kind of pause and say, take a quick gut check. And you can put this in the chat if you want. I'd love to hear some feedback on this, but I'd love to hear from you all if you have an AI policy. And if you do, how certain are you that nobody is moving sensitive data, and that they're all adhering to that? Do you have visibility over folks adding new skills? Right now, it's pretty easy, especially for folks using the command line, Codex, Claude, whatever you name it, to be able to add skills. And are those going through a vetting process? Because it's pretty easy to poison those things or accidentally download a skill you think is going to be great, and it might do something that's unintended or unexpected, right? So I'd also say if you hesitate to answer either of those, then you're definitely in the right place, and this talk is for you for sure. The whole thesis that I want to talk about is you really can't ban your way out of these. Your folks are going to want to use these. They probably are using these, and the best way to handle this is to enable them in a way that has proper governance, that you're able to monitor and safely and securely roll these tools out regardless of where you put them. It doesn't, we'll talk a lot about the SOC today, but we've also had clients who rolled this out all the way down to their groundskeepers, for example, and the folks who are actually doing maintenance on equipment, for example. It's been a huge accelerator there, because no longer do you have to go dig around for service manuals. You take a picture of the lawnmower and say, how do I take this thing apart? And voila. So AI is a huge enabler and accelerator there, but all of that really requires proper governance and monitoring around it. All right, so here are the 5 questions that yourself as a leader, or that you should be really asking your leaders. And this really frames, I think, the whole talk that we're going to have today. And it's probably worth taking a screenshot of this or coming back to it later and looking at the recording. But the first one I would say is, what AI is already inside the nation? And is it sanctioned or not? Do you have visibility over that? Do you happen to know if somebody goes and says, logs into their own personal OpenAI account or Anthropic or insert provider here, Copilot, you name it? Are you going to be made aware of that? What are the staff tools and vendor add-ons, features, and so on that you do have licenses for? And how are you making sure that those are the only things that are being used there? The next one, and this one's very critical in this day and age, is where's the data actually going? And it's not about what your chosen provider said to you, it's worth getting deep into the contracts and having those conversations to really understand how your data is being transferred, how it's being used, and so on. And next, the are you prepared for AI-powered attacks? Are your people aware that they could get a call in the middle of the night from somebody high up in the company asking them to approve some financial transfer or something else? And have you established a policy around that? How to really make sure that your folks are prepared for that, how they can verify those sorts of requests, and all of those steps in there. What or whose identity does the agent use, and can you see what it did? So this really stems from that inside clock in particular, right? As you're rolling these tools out, often it's you're giving them out broadly, and there's a potential that the agent can use an identity that you don't want it to. For example, as you might imagine, myself and Ed have privileged access to a number of systems that we work on and whatnot. And so we have to be very careful and set appropriate guardrails to make sure that it doesn't use our identities and it uses the identity that it needs to, right? So that way it can't do any actions beyond the scope that we're expecting it to do. And then how do we bring it in? How do you all bring AI in on your terms, on your timeline, and inside those guardrails? I think it's really worth noting the tags on the right side of the slide here too. Every one of these is what we're going to be touching on as we go through here. And if any of these are hard for you to answer right now, that's totally okay. Everyone is at different phases. You don't need to compete with the Fortune 500 companies out there. You need to do what's right for you, for your nation, for your people, and so on. All right. I've already used some of these terms, but I did just want to have a quick level set because particularly the term agent gets thrown out there all day, every day. And I want you to understand how I'm using it and how most of the industry has adopted these. The first two are pretty self-explanatory. A chatbot is exactly what it sounds like. This is where a lot of the LLM providers, your OpenAIs, your Anthropic, even Copilot started out really as this. It was more of a Q&A dialogue. You put in a prompt, you got a response and all of that. That led into the evolution of Copilot and Copilot-like tools. So these are the agents, or sorry, these are the assistants that ride along with you, whether it's at your terminal, whether it's in something you're coding, whether it's in your Excel spreadsheet or your Word document. It's really designed to help assist you with there. And all of the big tech companies, all that have rolled out some variation of this. And then finally, agents, and this is going to be a big focus of our talk today, and why I really wanted to take a moment to define this, is the agents in particular are really a different kind. They're still pretty new at this point, really only about 2 years that they've been able to be functional in this particular capacity. And an agent, to me and to the industry, is really the ability to plan and execute multi-step work and utilize tools, right? And those tools could be MCP servers, they could be command line tools if you're running this locally at a terminal, really anything. It could just even be those skills I was talking about. It could be, the playbooks that you're giving it. And in any case, that's really what an agent is, right? It's that planning and execution with tools especially. So it actually reads, it decides, it acts, and then ideally it reports back to you about what it's been doing, what it's been thinking, and so on. It's almost like having a separate employee, and I say it like that for a reason you'll see in just a few minutes. But that one word, acts, right, to me is everything. And it's really the value proposition and the opportunity in the age of AI that we're in now. But it's also the risk, right? It's really where this risk conversation is centered. So, uh, you know, the case files that we talked about at the start there, as Ed mentioned, that's really the agents working without those guardrails and without those governance, and they we've now seen how rogue they can go, or at least some capacity of how they can go rogue and things can go wrong.
Sean, if I could just add a point on that last one
Please.
briefly. I think as this technology's matured and it's maturing so quickly, over the last few months, there's been a real shift in the capability of these models and these agents. I think Sean and I work in the technology space, software engineering, security, and we can see the capabilities of these models as they're let out in supporting the kind of complex operations that we carry out. And the changes in the last few months are stunning. It's truly incredible what these things are capable of. So the point I'm bringing that up is that their capacity to support business operations or security processes is you have to see it to believe it. It's truly impressive. And it's something as a business or an organization can really empower your teams to do so much more. I just want to share that there is a market shift over the last few months, and it's just going to continue to be accelerating as we go into the new year. Thanks,
Absolutely.
Sean.
Yeah, thank you. So I want to focus, as Ed just noted, a lot of our focus at Telesystems has been around security operations, and that's not just the security around agents. We do that as well, but also the actual SOC responding to incidents and so on. So I want to talk a little bit about what agents actually do and give you an example here, some examples here of how agents work for security operations. And this is, those of you on the call that have maybe small security teams or even large security teams, this is really for you all. And even if you outsource this to manage service providers or manage detection and response, this still applies, and I'll explain why in just a minute. But the first thing I want to call out, and there's been a number of articles, Google just published one recently from their research, that the threat vector is changing, right? It used to be you had something like 48 hours to respond when compromise popped up. And what I mean by that is, let's say somebody is able to gain access and install a privilege escalation tool. There used to be hours to days before the next activity occurred. That's now decreased to minutes, which means on the defense side, we also need to be responding within minutes. The next is, that phishing triage that we used to have can absolutely obliterate an analyst's morning. So taking hours to respond to those things is no longer acceptable, right? Um, we need to move away, especially on the security operations side of thing, from only looking at criticals, right? It turns out that now, once any sort of foothold is there, these AI tools are so good at finding escalation pathways and whatnot that even your high and medium vulnerabilities that you might have been ignoring, or your high and medium alerts that you may not have been spending as much time to investigate, are actually more important now than they ever have been, right? The next is being able to use AI tools allows you to do just that, right? Of you can actually investigate every alert. It also allows you 24/7 coverage. So if you don't have that today, it certainly helps with that. It also can really augment those investigations that if you're waking up your seniors at 3 o'clock in the morning and they haven't had coffee, now they've got a reliable tool to really make sure that every checkbox in the playbook is being met. And if you don't have playbooks, that's okay too. Those are all things that you can plug in and help with by leaning on the AI tooling, right? One thing I do want to make clear, though, is the analysts do the work, right? We've rolled this out over a number of clients, hundreds of at this point. And the one thing that we see is it's very important, especially in security incidents, to leave humans in the loop, to allow your analysts to focus on what they're good at and utilize the agent for automating away the repetitive tasks, the standard steps in an investigation. So ultimately, we keep humans in the loop and make sure that they're enabled with a force multiplier and an accelerator here. And For those of you that have managed detection and response or a managed security service provider, there's also a decent chance that they're already running AI tools on your alerts, and they may or may not have asked you. I've seen a lot of practices where their legal folks just ruled it in and said, "Yep, we're covered under our existing contract," or something like that. So if you haven't asked and you have one of these in your system or really any of your vendors, it's worth asking that maybe on Monday. Just, hey, what are you doing with my data? And can you really define to me where it's going and everything else? So you might already be an AI consumer, whether you wanted to be or not, and it's worth circling back to some of that because I'm certainly seeing a lot more of this in the industry because those providers are definitely recognizing the value of using these tools.
Hey, Sean, we might have a question.
Yeah.
Michelle, do you?
Yes, I just asked if there was a question, but nothing yet. So I'll let you know if we do get one.
Okay.
Cool. All right. So at this point, you might be thinking, all right, how much of this is real? How much of this is slideware? And so I wanted to give you guys some numbers to show like we're actually doing this, we've done this, and show you some numbers from different use cases. And these are across various industries. They are in a number of cases from large Fortune 500 companies. So I would say, are you going to see 4.8 million in annual savings? Not unless you had a much higher spend than that anyways, but the percentages and whatnot do apply and there is a savings to be had here. So kind of taking this box by box here, the first thing I want to illustrate, especially in the security world, is that the mean time to resolution is increased by 80% or more. And this is huge, right? That a lot of those tasks that your responders and whatnot would be tackling in the first minutes of an incident, you can have that ready for them when they log in now. And I'll kind of explain that process a little bit later and why we're able to see results like that. The next is like I said, there's a definite savings here. Sometimes it's in keeping headcount at a steady state. Some of this also stems from the ability to close those incidents and really minimize the damage and blast radiuses that you can see there with a number of those. 24/7 continuous compliance. This is huge, right? I'm sure you folks deal with a number of regulatory bodies and things like that. And one of my favorite things about AI is how much easier it's gotten to do this. You plug it into the right data sources, whether that's your cloud or on-premise monitoring tools, and you can see ahead of time and remediate exactly where configurations are out of source. You can see when changes are made. And then my favorite piece, being that GRC is a big part of my work, is you're audit ready. It makes it so easy to pull a report because you've already got the data ready to go. And so literally in a matter of minutes, you can gather the evidence you need and respond to those audit requests or any requests that you see in there. And we have found in doing this work that it really only takes about a month to start seeing the ROI. And part of the reason I really advocate for doing this around your security operations is you likely already have a number of tangible metrics that you can look at and see the impact of, right? And that's one of the best ways to really show like, we're spending this amount of money on AI and we're seeing this amount of value because we're closing more incidents, we're spending less time on them. Our SOC analysts, our incident responders, all that are freed up to do other work and move the needle elsewhere. And so there's a huge return on investment that we've found if you target this area. The other thing I'd say from a business standpoint is that by doing this and getting your security team comfortable with these and having them understand the limitations, and I say security team, but this could also just be, the guy or gal who wears that security hat when they need to. But by getting them to understand the limitations, the skills, all of this, they then become an advocate for change and a person who understands when somebody wants to use a skill. Maybe it's somebody in finance or some other HR, you name it, department, all of the categories that Alex presented at the beginning. Now you've got a security professional who's got that lens, who's able to really help guide that and make those decisions alongside that, like, yeah, this is a great thing to add, or hey, we need to look a little deeper at this. So really like this, and like the approach of being able to tackle it in this manner. And like I said, of course, can't guarantee this, but this is, and I wanted to throw this in to give you a great feeling of what we can accomplish with AI and especially targeting the SOC there. Next.
And sorry, Sean, I'm not sure if you saw it, but Alex put in there some different use cases associated with could be supported with AI enablement. I think great list. It just shows you the breadth of way you can apply the tech.
Yeah, and there's thousands of more use cases,
Mm-hmm.
but those are ones that stood out to me and you around really getting that ROI in place,
Yes.
but easier to manage as well because a lot of the data that is sovereign, a lot of that is excluded here. But of course, you need to be monitoring that at all times.
Makes sense.
Absolutely.
All right, so here's a question that honestly I don't think enough people are asking before they buy or sign on with a provider, and that is directly to question number 4, if you think back to our list there, and that's whose identity does an agent use? And the best answer that we can give you and that we recommend is, and I'd really like for y'all to take this home tonight, when you onboard an agent, it's best to treat it like a new staff member, right? You're not going to hand a new member of your team the, keys to the kingdom and give them full root access on day one. So leaning into the identity and access piece, the agent should really get its own identity. Make sure you're adhering to your principles and practices around least access privilege, scoping those credentials. Ideally, don't give it any shared admin accounts and run it in environments where it has a minimal blast radius. And this is especially important as your folks are getting used to these tools, because even just an incorrect prompt can cause it to go do things that may be unexpected. Even if it's not meant to be malicious, it can cause problems. I'm sure anecdotally you guys have heard of, oh, I deleted my prod database and things like that. And unfortunately, that's very real. So the best way to do this is make sure it's scoped there. The next is the data boundaries. Make sure that it's only able to use the data that you are requiring for the role or task that you're giving it. Make sure that your platform is enforcing that. You don't want to do this for prompts. Politely asking the AI, hey, stay in your lane and don't access this is not really control, right? And it can certainly go beyond that, depending on the task that you've given it. I do want to recognize that this presents a new attack surface. You don't hear about it quite as much, but it's still floating out there, and it is in the OWASP top 10 about prompt injection and poison inputs and tool misuse. That is very, very real. I mentioned skills a few times. That's one of the ways this can happen. Prompt injection and poison inputs are very interesting too, especially as we use to the age where we're allowing AI agents to potentially read emails and things like that. I don't know if you guys remember, it was kind of a troll thing back in the day, but you could put in plain white text at the end of an email something like the word spoon over and over again, and then the person would suddenly get all these advertisements on Google for spoons and they didn't know why. Well, this has evolved now that if you actually put a prompt into an email and an agent reads it, there's a potential that it can action on that prompt. Same thing with stuffing these prompts into various log sources and things as a part of your attack. You can potentially get the agent to do something there. And there's a number of different ways, but that data sanitization, giving clear guardrails and this governance we've been talking about is really the way to handle that. And then, of course, oversight and audit, making sure you know from day one how you're going to be able to log every action, keep humans in the loop. And I recommend rehearsing the kill switch, understanding if you do need to pull the plug on this, how are you going to lock its accounts? How are you going to handle that? And being able to stop it in case it does start to do unexpected things for you. Next. All right, so next takeaway I have for you all is really the roadmap. I've started to sort of hint at this a bit, but you might be asking yourselves like, well, where do we start or where do we go next? And we've found great success by focusing on the security operations, like I touched on a few minutes ago. So whether that's an MSSP, MDR type of contract, or whether it's a SOC, or just a couple people wearing some security hats when they need to, your team already has a queue full of alerts. They need to triage, decide, and respond. And really focusing on that queue and enhancing that is a great first pilot because you can get measurable analytics out of it. It's contained and it's very foundational to making sure that you're keeping your organization secure and safe. This is really where you can prove it and measure it. Oh, go ahead, Alex. Sorry. Now, the path itself. This is probably one of the least glamorous slides that I have for you all, but it's exactly why this matters, right? We need to make sure that you've got ready identity, your data hygiene, your visibility. And while that's not always the most glamorous thing, especially for a webinar when I'm trying to keep you all engaged, it is non-negotiable. And AI really amplifies bad data practices or bad IAM practices, or maybe just not up to snuff. It doesn't even have to be bad. So it really highlights that, and you can see that across the enterprise for sure. Next up, the assist side of things. Co-pilots, they help you draft, they suggest, but ultimately your people still do the work. And then finally, supervising agents to actually get work done, keeping humans in the loop to approve it so that you've got some eyes on there. And then this is really where that pilot that I was just describing kind of lives. It's at that supervised stage of getting the agents out and understanding what they can do, measuring them, keeping eyes on them, and so forth. And then once you get there, you're ready to scale, right? You've got professionals on your team who know how to do this. They understand it. They understand the security behind it, and you can basically take the training wheels off and start to bring this out more broadly and enhance other areas in your organization. So the part I really want you to hear is, locate yourself, right? Most organizations, I imagine those of you on this call are no different. But are you on the ready and assist side of things, or and that's fine. Like I said, you don't have to compete with the Fortune 500s, or are you trending more to co-pilots, agents, or maybe even scaling? I'd love for that to be a poll or a chat question that we can poke at later. So to say that again, where are you on the sort of crawl, walk, run scale here?
Yeah, and Sean, Tony brought up a really good point. The foundational piece of this, a
Mhm.
lot of even the Fortune 500 companies haven't established a good route uh, base for all these co-pilots and agents that are going to go wild across their organizations. So really, you can't pass go
No,
until you
definitely.
paid the dues on configuring your policies, making sure identity is cleaned up and
Yeah.
appropriate. Go ahead, Ed.
Oh no, I was just agreeing.
Yeah, it's just and co-pilots are a great way for all the users to get familiar with the questions that
Mhm.
work the best with any of these with the agents or co-pilots. So it's just a evolution of adoption for sure. Thanks, Sean.
Yeah, and within that, a lot of those Fortune 5 companies, they're trying to stay bleeding edge, cutting edge, right? And so their CTOs are standing up there screaming, use more AI, do this, and they're not necessarily taking the time to do a lot of what you guys just described for sure. and it's biting them. They're ending up in the news, right? There's more and more of it every day. So it's okay to go slow here. Make sure that you got everybody comfortable. Lean into those Copilot and other POCs like you were describing. That's great. All right, so where does this go once you've got the pilot running, whether it's a SOC pilot or otherwise? I'd make this kind of concrete for you, especially if we pick on the SOC example. Once you've got agent or agents in there to pick up and triage alerts, define the blast radius, go forth and tie in with other agents and skills to define compliance, make sure that you're meeting the obligations for the incident. If you've got run books, allowing it to take a look at that. And you can literally work the incident through these different pathways here of all the way up to the end state of, all right, these are the actions. Oh yeah, we went the wrong way there. Go one more
Yep.
slide. Okay, there we go. Sorry. I was like, wait a minute, this doesn't line up. All
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
so
yeah.
what I'm trying to illustrate is the flow that you've got here. So deploying agents in here that have specific tasks is a great way to prevent hallucinations, blowing up the context windows. And so what I wanted to illustrate to you all is you start with a security agent in there that detects, contains, a compliance agent that checks the obligations, and then finally an operations agent. And those can often be run by separate agents that you coordinate together. And then finally, once the results of each of those come out, like let's say the operations agent comes out and says, hey, I'd like to lock this user's account because it looks like they're doing something bad or they're being brute forced or somebody got their password, whatever the reason is, then you've got a human in the loop that says, yeah, go ahead and take that action. Let's do that. We've even seen folks who are a little more mature in the end here, end state here, that they get to a point where that action is autonomous, but that takes time. It takes getting comfortable, and it takes really understanding and building out that trust. So I want to give you a concrete example there. Next. All right, so almost at the end here, and then I'll hand it back to Alex. And I really wanted to make sure that we illustrate what AI governance really is. So this is an important takeaway. It's the governance, risk, and policy, right? We really want to make sure that we're all on the same page about this, and it comes down to four decisions. It's really who can use AI, which roles the AI can use, which tools, how we're sanctioning, how we're observing that, what data can the AI touch, what can it never touch, where is the data going, how are upstream vendors potentially using it, and you really want to define all this and not leave it up to the vendors, right? And finally, which decisions? So where is AI drafting? Where can it be a decider? Where can it never be a decider? And you'll always want human in the loops. And who's providing that oversight, right? Who's approving actions? Who's doing the audits? And who's needing to answer for this, right? And you definitely don't want to lean onto banning it, because then your folks are most likely going to start doing shadow IT kind of stuff and using it. So don't recommend banning it, and it's not a binder or an IT project. These are all leadership choices which should be defined and written down. And if you get nothing else out of this slide, I hope this is out of this deck today. I hope it's this one that stays with you and gives you some food for thought about next actions. Next.
If I could just add to this one really quickly, Sean.
Sure.
This is really one of my favorite slides because it really clearly lays out what AI governance is from a decision-making process. And well, sorry, Alex, I meant the previous slide. Apologies. I think overall we've talked about a lot of people in the organization, they're using AI. And I think as part of a governance program, it's really to enable your staff. You're not trying to block them from doing anything. You're probably giving them essentially the same tools that they have now, but in a controlled way with the right kind of access to your data. So it's done safely and in alignment with the organization's priorities. But that shadow AI component to it is one of the ones you can address very quickly and just with a little bit of oversight and control. All right, on to the next start, Sean.
No worries. That's great. All right. So how do you actually stand this up? And honestly, doesn't require a purchase out of the box, right? So start with the AI committee, start with a trusted design partner where you need guidance, get your leadership and compliance teams all singing off the same sheet of music there. And then every decision that follows after that has an owner, has a policy, and so on. So putting those decisions of who, what data, which decisions, and whose oversight down is the thing that's going to really help you be successful in rollout and adoption of more AI tooling and moving up from crawl to walk to run and so on. And that this one document really becomes your policy that helps shape all that. And then make sure you pilot inside the rules, run anything in practice with human approval, monitor those agent identities, identify observability gaps, and lean on checklists. There's a number of resources out there, which I think Alex may touch on that at the end a little bit, but NIST has got some documentation. There's the resources for the tribal resources out there as well that define this. CISA also has a number of scaffolding, so you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You just need to adapt it to what fits your organization there. Next.
Yeah.
All right.
So,
Or to you, Alex.
yeah, I think I can take over from here, Sean. Thank you for that great in-depth acknowledgement on what are truly the real steps to get the policy in place, get the foundation in place before you go up the chain on co-pilots and agents. And really, this mimics what Sean was just talking about in a defined checklist on some of the things you can get out of the way from the start, right? And that's really standing up that AI committee, whether you're a small organization or a large organization, you need to have some leadership around this. Getting that inventory around your shadow IT, AI use, extremely important because that will show you the volume at which that policy can immediately affect. And then really defining with some good partners on picking a pilot that both has an ROI component to it, but also is measurable from a utilization perspective. And then getting your data and identity in the house organized well enough that you can start rolling this out is important. And I've worked with tons of partners out there, and I can tell you that you really have to engage with the right trusted advisor that can set you on the right roadmap to get you ready for those agents. And I think that's where agents, getting everybody in an organization to the point where they can adopt agents, is where the true ROI is going to come into play. And I think that is it. There's some of our contact information at the bottom here. We are going to have that follow-on conversation around AI acquisition, how you select certain companies to work with, Anthropic, ChatGPT, Microsoft, on those AI paths. So I'll leave it there and pass it over to you, Michelle.
Yeah, thank you. Reminder for everybody on the call, use the chat or the Q&A if you have any questions. I don't see any at this time, but I do have a couple of questions for you, Alex. I know you'll be at TribalNet. Your session is day one, I think at like 9:30, like one of the very first sessions of the day. Can you tell everybody in the call maybe what that session is going to be about and how it would, benefit them if they're there to attend?
Yeah, the highlights there are AI today is very hard to acquire, meaning that it's very hard to understand which products you really need and how to budget for them. So there's going to be conversations around the different companies, Anthropic, ChatGPT, and Microsoft, their models on how they are structuring their licensing, their acquisition models, and their pricing, and really dive deeper into, those initial pilots. What are those going to look like? Large scale AI deployments. What are those going to look like? and a deep dive on not only the risks of AI and the costs that both Telesystems and I think are going to evolve, where these companies need to make back some money. How are they going to do that? And we're going to talk about some of the forecasts 12, 24 months out, what that is going to look like and the impact on all of us.
Maybe Sean or Alex, you can answer this one, but I mean, there is a lot of information that you went over here, like a lot of stuff. For someone on the call who was maybe in that, crawl stage, what is the one thing that you would say to them, hey, take this. If you're going to start, if you can take one thing away from this session today, this is what it should be.
Yeah, I'll just start those 2 last pages of checklists.
Mm-hmm.
Focus on those 2, as well as the list of use cases. Find out which department is going to be the most impactful.
Mm-hmm.
And then really just work with a good trusted advisor is key there. We'll share these slides, obviously, and I'll actually post them on our website so everybody can access it from anywhere with some highlights of what those bullets and focus points are, Michelle. And awesome. I don't know, Ed or Sean, if you have any.
I'd agree wholeheartedly. I think it's leaning on those different resources on the checklist there, making sure that you're taking the time to roll it out at the pace that's right for you. Herb, I saw your message in the chat there. There's nothing wrong with being on tummy time right now. Love that analogy. And at least you know there's nowhere to go but up, right? And it's all about making sure that you do that in a way that's sane and safe for your organization and people. And the checklist and resources is the answer.
Mm-hmm. Herb, I think that you need to make sure that you put Alex's session on your agenda for TribalNet. And then last question, Alex, you went through a lot of information. How can you help everybody on the call? If they were to reach out to you, what do you offer and what can you and your team do to help tribes?
Yeah, as a trusted advisor that knows a lot of the partners, especially in the AI space, and I now have relationships with Anthropic, ChatGPT, and Microsoft, I can advise on not only the acquisition strategy, but also bring in the right partner at the right time to do the crawl foundation stage, as well as build up to the Copilot development. And eventually, the most important thing organizations are going to want to do is enable those agents to be automated. So that's something that I advise pretty much every day and can lean on partners like Telesystems AI as an example to provide not only knowledge, but also support in that process.
Yeah, that's great. Amazing. Well, everybody, I don't see any other questions, so I think we'll start to wrap things up. Everybody on the call, you'll receive an email tomorrow with a link to see this video recording. You can share it with anyone on your team. I will make sure to include everyone's email who's on the call. We'll link to the presentation or to the website so you can see and access that. As always, if you guys have any questions, if you're like, gosh, what's Alex's email again? Just reach out to us here at TribalHub. Contact us at tribalhub.com and we will make sure that you get in touch with who you need to. With that, any last words, Alex, Ed, Sean?
I just say thank you all for your time. Yeah.
Okay.
And I said the same thing. What he said. Appreciate you guys coming out. And if there's any questions, get a hold of Alex and we'll be happy to plug in and help where we can.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, TribalHub and Tribal Isaac.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a great afternoon and we'll talk to everybody soon.